Welcome to the second part with Federico Clavarino about Hereafter. Here we are again.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. So there are still a lot of questions. We'll try to choose the best one, at least for me. So let's start from the portraits, because you just said that you're not a really good portrait photographer.
Yeah.
Why you think you're not so good at taking portraits?
I think it's because I'm not very interested in portraits, in the sense that even as a viewer, it's not the first kind of image I would be interested in looking at.
It's true that in your work there is never a dominant of portraits. This is true, but in almost all your works you have portraits, except Italia, that you have different kind of portraits, let's say.
Mind you, I took a lot of portraits when shooting the Italy book, but I took them all out because they didn't fit in the book, in that particular book project. And in this one, there are some portraits, but I didn't want to take portraits. I mean, it wasn't an intention. I wanted to take portraits of I remember, but also because I wanted to give a face to the voices. I wasn't very sure I wanted to take pictures of people where I traveled. I think it was also because there were things I wanted to avoid of cliches. But then it happened. It just happened. There were people for example, the one you had before, that guy's name is John. My grandfather was also named John. And I met John in Wad Medani in Sudan. And I just asked him, I needed information about how to get to a particular place. And he said, I also want to, let's try and go together. And so we went together. And when we got there, I remember they didn't let us in. And so we were in that place you see in the picture, that was very, very close to the entrance of this place. And he was just like, oh, could you please take a picture of me? And so I set up the camera and I took a photograph of him. And then I sent him the picture once I got back. But then I became interested in the picture because the sun suddenly came out a little bit. 3 weeks, it evidently he had the sun in his eyes, so he squinted. So he has this peculiar expression in the picture as, there's something troubled and there's something going wrong with vision, in general, and the expression of his face. And that's somehow aligned with a text that is on the other page. There's a text that than the previous page, when just like next to the portrait. And it's a text that has to do with eyes, and it has to do with prejudice, and it has to do with the act of looking. And it gives the title to that particular chapter, which is These Accursed Eyes of Mine. So then it just made sense to have the portrait in the book on that page. And there are other portraits in the book that have worked somewhat similarly, maybe because, I was in a situation in which it was very kind of easy to photograph someone, or it was kind of rather natural in that situation. And then they kind of really worked well within the chapter. They came to symbolize something, and they became a part of the narrative. So I decided to use those portraits in the book, but they were never meant to, be part of my strategy. And in later books, I have portraits, and sometimes it's just because it's the way the book needs to work. Like in this project, I shot in Lisbon, in the neighborhood of Alvalade. Taking pictures of people there was and so I kind of I made myself take portraits in the street to these people, and of these people, and it was a bit of a challenge. I find it difficult to do, and but it was also very interesting. And I think the problem I have with portraits is that they're meant to stand for someone, they're meant to represent someone. And I'm usually kind of not only not very interested by that. But I also kind of have a problem with that. There's something in the portrait that it kind of reduces a person to something. I'm usually a lot more interested in people's gestures than their faces, and that might also be connected to kind of a problem we have in our family. As far as I know, it's called Progopagnosia. So it's basically a face recognition problem.
I have it too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you're the first other one I meet outside of my family. But it is very severe in certain family members. So, for example, my mother, she's an English teacher, and sometimes she will fail to recognize students she's been working with for years because they kind of cut their hair, or they appear in contexts that are not the one she expects them to.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's exactly like, yeah, no, I know perfectly, and when you have to teach, it's so bad.
Yeah, and there's famously my uncle Robin failed to recognize his own daughter, so my cousin, because they met at a supermarket he doesn't usually go to. So it's kind of like pretty severe in him, not as much in me, but I have my anecdote to tell too. So, but this probably to say that probably the relationship I have with portraiture is also informed by this problem,
Yeah. So, but at first, this book in your idea was just picture inside the house. Then,
the beginning. Yeah.
Just that. Then probably the pictures without portraits, and then with portraits. Yeah. So you add layers during the time working on this project.
Yeah, I mean, that always happens. You add layers or you take layers out. Like in the Italy book, as I said, I decided to edit portraits out, And I think that's just because you slowly see the kind of narrative, the book, the work coming together. So you make decisions accordingly. Things happen, things you hadn't programmed, and those things might be very interesting. So they then become part of the work.
Yeah, I agree, but we are avoiding a specific subject. That is, what you are saying now is that you don't feel completely comfortable of taking portraits, or it's not your favorite thing. But the fact that you are really, to me, a really good portrait photographer is something else. Like, your portraits are really good. Maybe it's something that you don't like so much to do, but you are really good to do it.
Thank you. I am very rarely with a portrait, and lately I've been working more like in a studio environment. I'm kind of looking for a kind of an interesting way of working with, and as I was saying, for me, it's becoming more and more a line of gestures, so of things that people do with their bodies, and not only the face, and especially like something that has to do with what the body is expressive of, apart from being a picture of someone, But still, I was happy with quite a few of the portraits in this book, and I think there's always, as it's a difficult thing to do, there's always a certain amount of satisfaction that comes with it. I think I particularly like the portrait of my grandmother, but that's probably also because it reminds me of her. But there's something in its composition, the one with the eyes open, especially. Yeah, there's something in her look, and the fact that her lips are, there's a point in which they're like half open, and the lighting, there's something in it that reminds me of kind of Flemish painting, and that light coming from the window, and the blues in the hair. There's something I kind of really like about her expression, and the light that, and also the the creases in the sweater at the center of the frame. I really like that because it's, kind of picks up something of the lines on her face, all the wrinkles. So yeah, no, sometimes it works.
Yeah, but in all your portraits, you have this really natural way of pose.
I don't like it when they feel too stiff, And there's kind of a lot of portraiture I see that kind of feels too stiff, I'm looking for something, but it's not only the portraits. In every picture, there needs to be some feel like it's on the verge of becoming alive, or that has just been stopped. But there needs to be that kind of movement, that kind of tension, some kind of like really odd detail, something that is kind of going on, something that is disrupting the fixity of the image. If you want it to work, that's the way I see it, at least. And it's the same thing with, with pictures of places and architecture. It's so easy to take a precise photograph, one in which all the lines are straight and, everything, all the weights are balanced and everything is where it should be. Everybody could do that with about enough training. But what you want is something that moves, something that is not entirely solved as a picture. And I think that is as difficult to do in a portrait than a picture of, a place or even an object.
But how do you work with your subject? For example, in this picture, what do you ask for? Like, how is your relationship in that moment? How do you build it?
I don't have a method, and that's probably why I don't think I'm so good kind of portrait photographer. But then I don't have a method with anything. I mean, I obviously have some kind of method. What I mean is that there's a lot in that particular moment that dictates what's happening, what's going to happen. It's not like, I stop someone and I ask them questions. There's something I do to kind of generate a comfortable situation. I'll just I make it up as I go, mostly. I'd probably stop this guy and I don't know what happened in that particular situation, but he probably had a short conversation and I explained to him what I'm doing and then I'll frame the picture and I'll just I had to take the ground glass out and then put the film holder in and remove the dark slide, cock the shutter, and then take the picture. So then there was this moment, I would be looking at this person probably and decide when to take the picture, hoping that they wouldn't move too much because as you can see, the depth of field that are great. So you didn't want them to move out of focus. So you didn't have much time, and it was just a kind of feeling, knowing when to shoot. Like for example, this guy, you see what he's doing with his eyebrow, and that's what I liked. And what I also tried to do is to somehow remove myself. Not remove myself as in trying to be. It's kind of the opposite. It's trying to see in a way that is a bit blurry, trying not to look, trying to suspend control, There's kind of there's something weird and mystical about it, but there's always a moment in the pictures, when I'm taking the pictures in which I'm kind of trying not to focus with my mind, trying not to see, trying to let it happen. That kind of black boxing thing of photographs where you click the shutter and you stop seeing with 35 mil. So I was trying to keep that idea that for a moment you're kind of surrendering whatever it is you're photographing and kind of let the magic happen and hope it works, So there's a lot of that in my method in general.
Yeah, but I understand it. It's really weird because, right now we are around, I think probably this one is going to be the episode 50. I still don't know. But, after around 50 episodes, I can start to tracing back a bit some reply. And it's really curious about the fact that a lot of photographers that I recognize as amazing portrait photographers, there is not a formula, of course, but at the same time, it's a lot about, let the thing happen and not be ready, but almost be ready to just click in the right moment, that it can be, a physical or mind space, or I don't know, like a kind of interaction between two human beings. It's really hard to describe, probably.
Yeah, and I've been sometimes, classic thing I shouldn't say, but
Good.
I've been asked sometimes. I've been doing taking portraits professionally. Okay, so I have to go somewhere and take a picture of someone. Have a kind of a limited amount of time. I'm pretty sure there are people who are great at that. And I know a few. They always manage to take something good back, and I think they probably have a method. There's something they're doing, and for me, it's just like I find it so terribly difficult, especially if I don't connect with that person. Or maybe if the light is wrong, or if I become nervous, and I find it very difficult. It's a bit like, what? I've always sucked at going on dates. Like really, yeah, big time. Not good at that. Definitely not good at that. So every time I've I met someone and it ended up working, it was out of like a mix of kind of chance, spontaneity, and it just happened. But I kind of dread the idea of for example, the app dating that happens now. I have no experience with that. Kind of showing up and meeting someone for the first time. God, I wouldn't know how to deal with that. It would just feel so awkward. And it's similar with taking picture of someone. There are people who are good at these things, and for me, it's just either as I'm walking around or I'm in a situation and it just feels a bit weird and awkward,
And do you think it's more easy with people that like if you build a proper relationship with someone, it's more easy to take a portrait or not?
No, it really depends on them and you, and I think you can get lucky when you're on the street, and it's people you don't know. But with people I think it's like either you build a kind of a situation that works particularly well, or it's just that person is, they're so good at, at being photographed. Because there's that aspect too, when you're taking a photograph of someone, it's not only what you're doing, it's what they're doing, There are people who are just so good at being photographed.
Yes.
And then there's the way the way you align, the way it works between you. And for example, with when I worked with Tammy on the book, it became such a fun game, to take those pictures. And a lot of the time, I felt I was just only there to execute some kind of assisted self-portrait. The photograph was something that was born in her head, and something she was doing, and I just had to, frame it and, do the light. But the rest was something she was doing. And we often forget that when it comes to portraits or to generally pictures of people, the fact that there's a lot that these people are doing. A photograph of someone is always co-authored in a way. Of course, there are different degrees of agency, and there's sometimes coercion, and sometimes it's the opposite. As I was saying, it's kind of a self-portrait someone else has taken. But there are different degrees of decision making, and yeah, I don't know. It's an adventure. It's interesting. It can be really interesting.
So your next book is only about portraits?
Yes. No, and again, I think I have a problem with portrait as a word, and it's probably because it takes you back to this idea representation of this is this person, and the idea that this picture is somehow gesturing towards who they are, what they represent, or who they are inside and their internal world, and I don't believe any of that. So it's more about this kind of relation, and the way it comes out in the picture, what's going on in that moment between two people, and of course the light and the camera and whatever else is involved in the event. There's definitely a lot of what I've been doing in the years that have with that. So yeah, you're going to see something soon.
And how many portraits do you take normally? Like, for example, with this guy, how many pictures you need to shoot to have in the end one that you can not like, but that you decide to use in the book?
Oh, in this case, I just took this one. Yeah, I think I'm not. Again, probably I don't have a method, but it's usually 2 or 3 or 1. Situation. I can't kind of hold it. It's usually kind of maybe 2 or 3 pictures, or almost even 1. And yeah, normally it's the best one, the first one. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not only with people; it's with most things. So I will take kind of like more than 1 picture of a thing, and usually the first one, most interesting one. Then I become more aware of the situation and I take more conscious decisions. And then if I look at the negative, most of the time for one subject, it's probably going to be 1 picture. And if it's more than 1, it's just because I have time and I'm too excited or I'm too nervous about kind of like losing something. So I will take more.
It's really curious because I think for a lot of people the best picture is the last.
Yeah, it's definitely not like that in my case.
Federico, you said that you are more interested in gesture than portraits. But for example, in this project, there are not so many gestures made by people, at least.
No. And I think it's just because it was something I was starting to explore in general, the idea of taking portraits. And it's also because of the camera I was too slow.
What was the camera that you use in this project?
So I was using a Horseman VH. So that basically is it's a technical camera of the kind of Linhof kind of camera, a metal camera box and with bellows, a bit like a large format camera, but it's tinier and it only allows up to 6x9 film holders. And I was using 6x9 and then cropping it to 6x7.
So what and 6x9 are inches, right? Or centimeters?
No, they're centimeters.
Oh, okay.
So basically it's kind of medium format. And so the reason I got that, wanted to large format photography because I wanted that kind of pause, to have to set up a tripod and have to set up a situation. And I also wanted to explore the possibility, kind of tilting and shifting and playing with focus. And you can see it in this image. There's some games being played with focal plane. But so I wanted all of that. I wanted a cheap camera. I tend always to want cheap camera. And I wanted something light I could travel. And I also couldn't really afford shooting 4x5 or 8x10. Especially color. So I got myself this camera that is really cheap. It's still really cheap. Nobody wants them because it's kind of not one thing. So I remember, I think, buying the camera for like 250 euros. And the lenses were also really cheap, the Seiko lenses. And so I bought that and I practiced a little bit and then I used that to work. And so you're focusing on a very, very ground glass. And then you need to remove the ground glass. And you need to put the holder in. So it's also pretty uncomfortable because of that. You can't just, slide the film in, any 4x5 or 8x10 camera. You need to, it's a bit, the operation is a bit clunkier. It's less fast. But it was great. It was a good combination of kind of cheap and versatile. And so I used it for this project and I used it for the following book, for Ghost Stories.
Federico, what about the title?
So Hereafter is the name of a poem that my grandfather wrote after the Second World War. It's a poem he wrote on the occasion of his brother's funeral. His brother died, if I remember well, in Burma during the war. So the poem is this kind of rather old-fashioned lyrical poem about the afterlife, about meeting again after death. And I thought it was a fitting title because my grandfather had died, and there was something in the book that is a, kind of a reckoning, or a conversation, and with him, across death. And then, hereafter in English, it means, it both means the afterlife, the beyond. So whatever happens after death, but it also indicates, something that happens after in general. So for me, it had this double meaning, as the work travels through, across these two parallel rails of kind of family and history and politics. Well, there's this hereafter meaning, the land of death. So both the death of my grandfather and then my and speaking across death, and then all the death that was a part of the colonial enterprise, and at the same time a hereafter to what happens after all, what happens to a country after empire, and so it looked like a fitting title for the.
Just because
Yeah.
it's you. What if hereafter it was a food, a dish again?
Okay, I know what it would be. I think I know what it would be. So there's this thing that my grandma would make, of course, and it's called shepherd's pie. So what you do is you take lamb from the roast you had the day before. So we would sometime have roast lamb on Sunday, and then she had this kind of big, heavy metal tool she used to mince the meat. So you mince it, and you put it in the oven with mashed potato on top and gravy, and it's delicious. But it has something to do with using the remnants of yesterday to make something new.
Yeah, I understand why. So let's do it again for the second time. A music for this project, for this book.
A music,
A song, a sound.
a song, or a sound. That's a difficult one. I'm trying to think. I think that's a very, very difficult thing to say now. Can we skip to the next question?
Yeah, sure. It's not mandatory that everybody has to reply at all. So yeah, the second is, did you learn something during the time you made this project that can help other people to do a better job as a photographer?
Yeah. I mean, I think quite a lot of things I learned during this project. I'm trying to think like what the most important one. But I think it's probably to try and kind of know your limitations, like become aware of your limits as a photographer, but also kind of within one particular project, And in this case, it had a lot to do with what I could say from where I was speaking, So to be aware of your position, and what you can do from that position. So sometimes the exercise is to try and, let's say, reduce your possibilities. Try and be a bit more silent, not saying too much, not trying to say everything. Speak honestly from where you can speak, from where you know stuff. And in this case, it had a lot to do with not trying to, paint this all-encompassing fresco of the history of Sudan or Oman and British rule. It was more about family, It was more about being part of that family and what it meant and that particular story and what could be learned from looking at those things critically.
And the very last question, can you suggest us a book to have in one of the future episodes? Some different from the other time.
A book to have in the next episode.
Something that you discover in, between the first episode we recorded and this one. Something new.
Yeah, so I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Ricardo. Have we spoken about him?
Ricardo?
Ricardo Cases.
No.
He's a Spanish photographer, and he's one of my favorite. He's great, and a lot of his books are great. One that is Dot, that is marvelous, and I've been kind of going back to it quite a lot lately. It came out a few years ago, and now Ricardo has he brought out a kind of a new book. I haven't seen it yet, but I can't wait to see it, because it's basically a catalogue of books that were destroyed along the studio last year when Valencia, an area around Valencia, were devastated by a flood.
Yeah.
So he lost all of his books, and he went around the kind of destroyed landscape after the flood, trying to recover, parts of his books and photograph them, and then he decided to take all these photographs of kind of muddy pages and publish them together and it looks very. So yeah, definitely something of Ricardo.
Great.
Good food for the next episode.
I'm really curious. I'm going to check for it. And the very, very last question, that is a new one. Ask yourself a question and give yourself an answer. No, I'm joking. But we are going to do in the next episode, so be ready, photographers.
I think I can try and do that.
Yeah, if you want.
It's easier right now for me. It's easier than so. If I were to ask myself a question, that would be what would I change in the book now?
Yeah.
I think that's always a question that probably doesn't get asked enough, Mm-hmm. What do I regret? And in this case, I think I could have edited the book down quite a lot. It's like I feel it's probably a bit too long, and it could benefit from a kind of a tighter edit, maybe even, something that focuses, trying to retrace my steps here on the photographs in the house, and then just uses the other ones to, let's say, zoom into kind of some particular issues. I would probably restructure it completely and make something a bit more agile and with a different structure to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's quite common as a photographer. You want to change a project, a book specifically, just after some weeks or months. But I don't know, like in this case, the fact that the book it's quite long, it's quite dense. It's something that you enter and you are really not sure when you're gonna leave it. And I think it works so well. All the time that I take that book out from the shelf, just maybe to take a look of a specific pictures. In the end, I stay there, I don't know, at least several minutes.
Yeah, I think, now you made me think that they're kind of like two kinds of works, Sometimes you come across stuff, and it could be like photo books, it could be novels, it could be movies, and it could be series. And I can imagine, I don't know, for example, a 7-episode mini, and it's just perfect,
7 episodes of what?
Yeah, I don't know what, but I kind of a short series. I kind of, you know what? Something like Fargo series. Fargo.
Yeah, I love it.
So some, not all the seasons, but mainly, I mean, they're all kind of, and you will have, I don't know how many episodes, probably 12.
I think 10.
Or 10. So it's self-contained, and it's short, and it's perfect. Everything, the script, everything is kind of, every single moment of it is. And then you look at, I don't know, The Sopranos, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And The Sopranos is kind of another kind of work. It's a lot longer. I don't know how many episodes.
I think quite a lot of seasons.
Yeah, but it's an epic, right? It's and it goes on, and of course the ending is, there's so many kind of super interesting, Tony Soprano. But some episodes are really bad, There's one shot in Italy that is like, yeah, my God, I wish they hadn't done that. But still, you forgive all those flaws because the overall thing is very good. It's great.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think that maybe, you can't a work of that proportion, that it is also perfect in all of its detail. But when you have like it's a difference between probably a Tolstoy novel and a poem. In a poem, every word has its own specific weight. When you're telling an epic, kind of like a very, very long novel, probably you can have a few boring pages. Yeah, this to say that maybe this kind of work actually, it needs to be not so perfect. Probably it needs to be a bit long. Yeah,
I agree. And I agree also about all the thing about series and stuff. One of my favorite is Olive Kittredge. It's 4 episodes. It's more like a long movie. It's 4 hours of a movie, and it's so good.
I haven't seen it.
What? No, it's amazing.
I should watch it.
So good. It's
Oliver?
HBO. Olive Kittredge is from the book from I don't remember the name of the writer. Okay, I will write it down in the notes of the episode. But if you look for Olive Kittredge, it's super easy to find it, and it's the perfect combination from it's dense, it's funny, it's tragic. The main character is the same of Fargo, the movie.
Oh, okay.
I'm not able to pronounce her surname, so something.
I don't know.
McDormand.
I never remember the names of actors.
Because of the faces.
Yeah, possibly. Possibly.
Okay, thank you so much, Federico. Super happy that we recorded the first, second episode with a photographer with you. I'm really glad about that.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have done this. So thanks again for the invitation.
No, it's always a pleasure. Let's choose the third one. What? I hope.
I hope you don't regret it.
No, not at all. I was saying let's choose the third book.
Amazing, yeah.
And let's do it in a while, 2-3 months.
Perfect. Whenever you want.
Okay. Thanks so much, Federico. Thanks so much, everybody. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye.